was totally a nerd. I still am a nerd.
And I think now I realize why they paired us up.
It's completely by accident. A very happy accident. But I never expected COVID. I never
Yeah.
expected open education.
Hi, my name is Abubaker. I'm a year 13 student at Pristine. I'm currently studying sciences and I'm aspiring to be a medical student and then a future doctor. So today we have Aimen, who is an alumni from Pristine, who is currently studying, I believe, in the UK.
Yeah.
All right. So Aimen, if you can introduce yourself.
Hi, Adifaah. My name is Aimen Malik. I am an alumni from Pristine. I graduated in 2019 after spending 10 years in school. So from year 4 to year 13, I was there quite a while. And then since then, I came to London. I did an undergraduate degree at University College London for education studies. And now I'm currently in a gap year moving towards a master's that I'll be starting in fall in Stanford for international education policy analysis. So really excited to just talk about what I've done and also have a nice conversation. And really grateful for just everything and also Pristine throughout all of it.
Yeah, awesome. So let's start off with maybe just a brief summary of maybe your academic journey so far. So maybe starting from high school, what kind of subjects you took, what you kind of did to prepare for your schooling up ahead in university. So kind of start with high school. How was high school like for you?
So, high school was, I will say it was not what the movies make it out to be, but it was still really cool in its own way. I did my IGCSEs, but then I did my ASNA levels. And then apart from that, I think high school for me was a time where I explored a lot of things, did a bunch of extracurriculars, did student council, did some competitions, did like inter-school, but then inter-school, and then also like some international things, public speaking. Just, it was a time to really just try out everything basically to see what kind of calls me, what I'm interested in, but also just kind of learn the skills out of everything I could have learned from. And I think that in itself was very valuable to not just my application, but just my experience after high school.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what kind of student do you think you were in high school? Because I think we have certain like labels we have for students, like the very studious person or the one that was more into athletics and kind of. So if you were to kind of look at who you were back then, what would you use to describe yourself in terms of your personality back then?
Oh man, I was totally a nerd. I still am a nerd. Just very into my academics, very into my extracurriculars. I really wish I could say I was athletic. I was amazing I never lost a sports day obstacle race. But that was about where it went for me in
Oh,
terms of athletics.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that's basically what it was. But I was also quite vocal. Because I was in a lot of things, not just academic things. I guess I was just kind of all over the place, but the nerd part was very consistent and it still is.
Awesome. I think now I realize why they paired us up.
It's good to know though.
So or you just completed your bachelor's in education. So when did you kind of figure out that that's what you wanted to major in? And what was kind of your process of discovering that this is an actual field you can go into?
Oh, it's like an interesting question for me because it was completely by accident. I'd say a very happy accident. I was obsessed with economics. Like, if you came into my room during examination time, all of those were just covered in econ posters, and I think Miss Cody might have one or two of them still. Economics, and I loved the subject because I felt it was teaching me about the world. But when I thought about the jobs it would give me, I was very unsure of it. So I didn't want to be a banker. I didn't really want to go into a very money job. But yeah, I was going to do economics. I was looking at subjects like degree courses online,
Mhm.
and there was a university site I went to, and I was looking at their list of courses, and alphabetically, under economics comes education. And I was a bit like, oh, what's this? Like, isn't education just going to uni? And I opened it. And when I read about the subject and I read about like the modules and stuff, I just kind of realized it was everything I've ever wanted without knowing. It was a very interesting moment where first I was like, am I about to destroy my entire life plan for this? And then after like researching a bit more, I was like, yeah, I am. I love this. It's really cool.
For someone who had obviously, like you were at that stage, had no idea what this major was or what this degree was, how would you describe it to a person? Like, how to briefly summarize what it entitles or what it entails for you as a student who's going to go into it?
Okay, so education studies is quite oftenly misinterpreted as teacher training, which isn't completely what it is. It's something that it could be if you want to be a teacher, but there's a lot of other angles. It's academically, it's a mix of the philosophy, sociology, psychology, and the politics of education. So a lot of the work we look at is like international education policy, how that affects teaching, how that affects students. We look at the psychology side, which is like how people learn, how people need to learn, what you do to make learning more effective. We look at like the sociology side, which is more around the impacts and the social justice elements of it, of like how education is kind of an equalizer, or it's something that can really help people change their lives, and how you can make it something more effective at doing that, or how you can like increase access towards education for minorities, for refugees, for people in different circumstances. So it's really like it's a very broad thing that could be narrowed down to whatever niche you're interested in. And I think that's why I found it really interesting, because I love like all of these things, very into sociology, very into philosophy, but not enough to do a whole degree about them.
Yeah.
And this gave them like a focal point to focus on, while also kind of having a broader picture, which I found really cool.
When we all look at what university, what major we want to go into, we have to look at the bigger picture later on, what it's going to mean for our future. So when you were doing that research, what kind of solid job opportunities did you see that kind of attracted you and you were like, oh, I could see myself working in this field?
So there are opportunities in basically all sides of education, but the ones that were very interesting to me were around policy and international development. I actually took a subject which was development studies in my IGs, and this was a link towards that, in which we work on education for basically in the public policy sphere, but also in like think tanks and NGOs, maybe starting your own NGO, maybe like working for the UN, something like that. There's a bunch of those kind of job opportunities available, but it's not really something you think about. And the interesting thing is, even the people in those fields aren't really qualified for it, because they don't know what education studies really is. So if you look at like any education minister, most of them are not qualified in education. They might have a politics degree, but they don't really know about like the nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah.
And this seemed like a really interesting niche, which I didn't know existed, but definitely had space.
That honestly sounds really interesting. And do you think while you were studying, your like fellow students in university, did they also come to that degree like accidentally, or how did other people in your university kind of figure out that that's what they wanted to do, if you had the chance to talk to them about it?
Well, a lot of people came in wanting to go into teaching because it really is a good base for wanting to be a teacher, or like being a principal or a university dean or administrator. But quite a lot of people found it the same way I did, like through an accident, through like wanting to look at different things, but seeing it as an interesting mix of them. Also, it was a really popular degree for people who didn't know what they wanted to do. So it was a good degree for people who are just kind of like figuring things out, but think this is a good way into it, because it gives you a lot of transferable skills. So I know people who after this have completely shifted to like tech or like HR or like management. And I know someone who's a banker now, and I know it might feel like, oh, your degree didn't match up, but it just kind of means that your degree helped you give you the option to do more things. You could also go into law after this, quite interestingly. There's a lot of options.
Yeah, no, because when I see, because from what I've seen, there are certain degrees which teach you hard skills specifically meant for the preferred job after, but then there are some degrees, like I'm gonna assume like maybe like an MBA or stuff, stuff like degrees like that where you're learning more about, I guess, interacting with people in certain ways, and you're learning more, I guess, soft skills which can be applied in different jobs. So I feel like that's something that I noticed like about your degree, I guess, which is like it's very adaptable to different things. So I think honestly that's like I think you hit the jackpot with that. 'Cause,
Am I convincing you? Am I moving
yeah, you're selling it, honestly. Yeah, no, honestly, I think degrees like that are, it does take, I think, some initial courage to get into it because I guess the job part or what's going to happen after your degree isn't predetermined. So if you're willing to accept the fact that you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do after, I think that's an awesome degree to do.
I think there's also just an element of there not really being much awareness about
Mm,
non-traditional degrees.
yeah,
But it's just we have these certain images that a doctor, engineer, lawyer, a businessman, those are the only
exactly.
ways to go. But if you actually look into it, not just in education, but there's a lot of options and there's a lot of things in the world.
Yeah, exactly. And definitely like students like you that are very studious, if we just have them all going into degrees like medicine and law and these degrees, obviously it's great, but degrees which are also equally as important but aren't getting that much recognition, they're not getting amazing students like you going into them. So I think it's honestly awesome to raise awareness of degrees which aren't as known. Compare intelligence with like the job. Like you have, okay, you're super smart, doctor, lawyer, you have these options. If you aren't as smart, you have these options. I feel like measuring kind of the quality of a job with like the intelligence required to go into it and like maybe what it takes to get into it is kind of something we need to change because there's a lot of amazing degrees that are equally important but aren't getting recognition because I guess they aren't as well known and they haven't had that many people go into them. So I think it's awesome that you're going into this. So now you're going into Stanford, right? So what's kind of the next step for you going, what are you going into? What major, or I guess master, right? What master are you doing? And what's kind of your end goal with this?
So it's pretty much linked to what I said earlier, but way more specific. I'm about to start an MA in International Education Policy
Yeah.
Analysis. So it's quite specifically exactly what I wanted, which is exciting. It's a very research-focused degree though, so one of the big goals is to have a publishable piece of research by the end. So that makes it a lot more rigorous than a lot of the more practical degrees, in another way, of course. And I guess the plan is to, first of all, survive, because
Definitely.
it's going to be quite tough. It's going to be quite rigorous, and because this style is very different from the style that I'm used to
Yeah.
with a London degree. This is one in the US. But after that, I just kind of want to keep it open, see what's there for me. Definitely look into the NGO research sector. That's something that I've always been really interested in. And yeah, just kind of see what's there. If I like it enough, I might look into a doctorate, but that's a farther
Yeah.
thing to look at.
Yeah, definitely. Because I think from what I've seen, a lot of people prefer the route of, getting a degree and getting straight into a job because, that's where the money is. And even though money might not be a main priority, people know that they need to kind of start building a stable life. So
Mhm.
what kind of made you take the other route of going, okay, instead of just doing a degree and getting straight into a job, I want to go more into research and I want to go more into this field. So what kind of shifted you towards that?
I think I've just, as I said, I'm a nerd. I quite enjoy the
Mm,
academia side of everything. But another element I have to say is I have the support of my family, in which
mm,
we're able to afford me doing this and me not having to go straight into a job. Because I realize a lot of people don't have that opportunity and they have to work from the start, which is really admirable.
yeah.
Um, but because I had the chance, I took some space with it and I'm quite excited about it.
Mm,
And also, just with the job market these days, the amount of career progression you're able to have with a bachelor's versus a master's is very different,
mm,
especially with how specific my field is. If I want to work in research, I need to have a more research related degree.
yeah.
And as I said before, my undergraduate was very broad, which makes
Mhm,
it good for learning a lot of things, but it's
mhm,
not giving me like skills to just start a job immediately and know
yeah.
100% everything. So
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think obviously you had to do the application process for Stanford as well. But how was maybe your application process different when you were applying from high school for your first degree versus now applying after you've done your bachelor's for your master's?
So a big difference is definitely the country where I was applying to.
Okay.
So for my undergrad, I was applying to the UK, which works on a system known as UCAS. So you write one application, it goes to all the universities you want to apply
Yeah.
to. In the US, every single uni has its own application.
Okay.
And this is especially the case for masters. And actually,
Mm-hmm.
that's also the case for masters in the UK because I did
Mm.
apply for there. Um, so it was mainly about like looking very closely at each and every uni I was applying to
Yeah.
and being like, okay, these are the reasons I'm applying, these are what I'm going to put into my
Mm-hmm.
application, as opposed to having a more general based application.
Mm-hmm. All right. But what kind of made you choose Stanford over the other universities?
I think just I'm very excited about the course, and I think this is something that I'd also say for anybody looking at their undergraduate course is to look at the course content, look at the modules, like really look at them. What are they going to be teaching me? What's in term one? What's in term two?
Mm-hmm.
What are the names of the modules? And then maybe if you can look at the reading list if you're still not sure and
Yeah.
see how it fits in with what you want. And then
Yeah.
something else that could help is to also look at the faculty that's working there. So I was quite, like I had a bit of a fangirl moment where when I opened the faculty page, I found out that some of the people working there are people who I've already cited in some of my research.
Oh.
So I was like, okay, I mean, I have to go here now.
But what were some things in high school that you realized had prepared you for university?
Well, there were quite a few. One of them that I think was the most interesting that I never thought about was the fact that our high school is an international school. And that's a
Mm.
term that I hadn't even really heard of before going abroad.
Yeah.
But basically, it means that we have an international curriculum, which is different from the
Yeah.
country that we're studying in, but also we have diversity in the students and the teachers.
Mm.
And I know it feels a bit localized when you're very into it, but when you go abroad, you realize that it makes you a lot more adaptable.
Mhm.
Because I was with students from like at least 50 other countries, and I'm able to very easily be friends with most of them.
Yeah. And so obviously social life is also important because it provides a balance for, all the hectic studying you're doing. You need to have that balance to keep your mental health stable and healthy, keep your mind healthy. So how did you kind of balance your studying life with your social life in high school and then later on in university? Because obviously your demands changed from high school to uni. So how did you kind of change that?
So I think one of the biggest differences was living alone for at least a portion of uni for me. After COVID, things changed. But when you're alone, a lot of your social circle becomes the people you live with, and it
Mm-hmm.
becomes your support circle in a way. So
Yeah.
dorms that you're assigned to, the accommodations, or maybe just the people around you. It's kind of a hit or miss. I was very lucky that I made really
Mm.
good friends there. If you have some bad flatmates, you might have some bad experiences.
Yeah.
It helps a lot just coming back after like a stressful day at uni to
Mm.
kind of have like a mini, like you kind of make it your own home, right? Which
Yeah.
is nice. But I will say in terms of balancing things, it's not that hard to balance academics and a social life. It's really hard to balance academics, extracurriculars, and a social life.
Ah, okay.
And if you really want to kind of keep up, I guess, in the race of always like being in the best uni, at the best job, the best internship, whatever, you really need to balance those three things because it's hard to get
Yeah.
in with just your academics these days. But then also not having your academics can't even let you have a foot in the door, and then not having the social life just means you go insane.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'd say like the thing that I learned quite late in high school was
Mhm.
learning when to let go of certain things.
Ah,
Um, and I don't just mean like, oh, sorry, I can't hang out today, even though that is a
yeah,
big
yeah.
thing that you need to learn to say. Some of it's also just like prioritizing what's more important when you're looking at a bunch of different extracurriculars and also looking at
Yeah.
academics and also looking at a lot of different subjects in academics.
Yeah.
So prioritize what you need to do right now. Also realize that like sometimes you're putting more effort into something that you need to put into the thing.
Yeah.
And you're able to see that. You're able to let go a bit and be like,
Mhm.
okay, it's not perfect, but it's done.
Yeah.
Um, is better than perfect, and let me move on to the next thing because I don't have time to do everything all.
Yeah. And I think that's
So,
especially hard for people that are a bit of a perfectionist, because I think
mhm.
I find that in myself sometimes, where it's like I do want to put in a lot of time and effort into everything, but understanding that that's not physically possible without, I guess, hurting myself in the process, because technically I could do it all, but it's not going to be possible if I want to maintain my mental health. So
Mhm.
understanding that you need to prioritize certain things is, I guess, a lesson that you can learn in high school, or you can learn later on in life, I guess, with harsher conditions. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything you think students need to know? Anything you want to share?
I think you've been such a great interviewer that I've said all I needed to say. All I had to say. I guess it's just good luck. You've got this. It seems tough, and it is tough, but you'll get through it. And that's basically all it is.
All right. So thank you so much. Congratulations on your acceptance into
Thank
Stanford.
you.
I wish you the best of luck in that as well.
Thank you so
I guess
much.
you're also going to be moving to US now, right?
Yeah, I will be moving.
All right. So good luck with that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, all right. I think that's
Thanks.
the end of the podcast.